Hello and welcome to the Future of podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the future of being online. I'm Jonathan Narvey, your host, and I am with Shane Burley.
That's
Shane,
right, I'm here. We're in the same room. We're talking to a microphone. It's the future.
we're already living in it. That's amazing.
How did we get here? I was just doing the math in my head about how long it has been since we've talked about podcasting and blogging, like how long our conversation's been. We're now in like year 12 of, talking about this kind of stuff, which is amazing. We have all kinds of insights and all kinds of experience that you and I just together, we're a powerhouse, man.
All right, well, being that as it may, that's all good context, but I feel like people are going to be wondering, who is this Shane Burley?
That's right. Who am I?
So why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, my name is Shane. I have been online since 1993 when I built my first website, and then about 10 years after that, there was a thing called blogging that started, and then suddenly it became a big deal because stuff that I've been doing since the mid-90s, creating pages and things and building a website that was essentially a blog at the time, software caught up to the humans, and it became a way of disseminating your ideas, your thoughts, your feelings, business ideas, all kinds of cool stuff. And it had a lot of power back when it started because social media didn't exist. We didn't have Facebooks or Google Pluses, which is now gone, but we didn't have tweeting or anything like that. And now we've come sort of full circle where we've had the explosion of social, and then it is now kind of dying off a bit because people recognize just how much of a time suck it is. And as marketers caught up to the organic content creators, it kind of soured the pond a bit. So I think we're having a bit of a backlash now.
Well, we'll get into all of that in a little bit.
And
I wanted to also remind the audience, or let them know, that you are also the what's it called? Co-author of Blogging for Dummies, back when that was...
I was actually, it's really funny. I just updated my website last night, and I was going through all of the books and things that I've written, and because I've noticed that the Blogging for Dummies has continued, and I actually looked at a preview copy of the one that's just come out. But anyway, I co-wrote with my friend Susie the second, third, and fourth editions of Blogging for Dummies. And more recently, a couple of years ago, I published a book called How to Be a Vlogger, Blogger, and Podcaster in 10 Easy Steps, targeted at kids, of course. And then just this September, the Vlogging Handbook is coming out, which I hope does well, because it has a lot of, again, targeted for kids and things like that. So.
All right, that's enough self-promotion. Let's...
I wanted to give context about how important I was.
That was... It's all good. I did ask for that. I asked exactly for that. So you hit that one out of the park. And just to give our listeners a little bit more context about why I'm even interested in this as well is why I'm interested in the future of being online. Well, being online is sort of... It kind of rescued me from, I don't know, digging ditches all day. Like, I was back in the 90s, I was a print journalist, and honestly, I didn't have the best work ethic. I was not probably in the top 1% of all journalists across Canada or across North America, and so the future was kind of bleak for a middling writer who was working for a newswire. So being online, starting off with blogging, doing social media, and then gradually getting into digital marketing for different, mostly tech companies, sort of gave me, let me earn a living. And gave me a voice to be out there in the world. So I'm grateful for the ability to be online. It's I'm sure it's hard for people to think about what it was like to exist before this time period where it sort of comes to us so easily. Anyways, so that's my background, and that's Shane's background. And I wanted to talk about Before we get into the future of this, the future of being online, let's dive in a little bit more into the, what was it like for, maybe millennials or people who may not remember, the beginning of this, what it was like to set up a blog, have a persona online. I'm not talking about the how to make it happen, like what technology we would use and all that, but sort of what you would be thinking about as you developed your online persona. Why were people even doing this in the first place? It was kind of experimental. Shane Burley.
Well, from my experience, from the context that I started, I think initially it was just a drive to talk, to be able to tell people my story. Like, what was I thinking at the time? What kind of things was I doing online? What interesting things I might have found back in the day. I'm thinking about all of the digging in the scratching in the dirt, back in the early 2000s. But I think for most people, when they first get started in podcasting or in blogging or any form of content creation, like video as well, I think it's just a natural inclination for them to do it. They just want to. They have a desire to do it, and they find a method for them that speaks to them, that gets their point across.
And it started out, it seems to me, a lot of blogs were what I call today vanity sites.
Yeah.
You would sort of go on, and you didn't necessarily have that idea of, I'm going to connect with a huge audience. That was kind of the nice thing to have, but you almost used the blog as an online diary. But it's a new kind of diary where you're spilling your guts to the world, and maybe somebody listens and maybe you get famous. But it's sort of, I'm going to talk about whatever I'm interested in. Not a lot of dialogue going on, just sort of a broadcast to the world. Here are my thoughts on this thing.
Yeah, before comments allowed people to actually respond, you had people that were blogging. They would blog some sort of thought, they would blog some sort of idea, and then somebody else would respond on their blog. They would actually have a conversation between blogs, essentially. Comments then showed up probably 2004 or so, but that gave people the ability to then suddenly give feedback directly on the blog they were responding to, which was a great thing, and it worked for a very long time.
Now all that's moved over to
it's all
social.
moved to social media entirely. Like, I can't think of any blogs now that have comments on them. Even mine doesn't. I turned them off years ago, because when you have the ability for people to leave comments, it's great, but suddenly you were finding people that were responding. They would tweet about your blog post or your podcast or whatever. So it was a natural place where the people would go. The evolution went that direction.
Yeah, the only comments I see for the most part on, say, the if I'm doing some work for a company on the marketing side of things, and they have a blog, typically the comments that go to the blog are spam comments if they haven't turned on their spam filter.
Yeah. That's still a problem. I don't know why, but it is. Yeah.
And then I like that being online morphed from being this thing where I'm just going to sort of say my thoughts and maybe somebody picks it up, but I just sort of want to get my ideas out there, to we have now a space where you really can get your ideas out there.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the promise of the internet was I can get my message out to millions if I so desire, and now we actually do have the tools to do that.
Oh, easily. Yeah.
So there's also been this evolution of, if the blog was sort of your home base, now it has, because comments and the conversations moved to social, a lot of people have sort of almost, I think, given up on the blog, and they're sort of running their online persona on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, LinkedIn. They don't. The blog is not the central hub anymore.
I think I mean, overall, it's definitely lost its power because people did go to social. They went to Facebook. They went to Twitter, and they basically gave up on uh, having a website, not just a blog, but as their central sort of go-to point. But I think it's coming back. I've seen a lot of people start to talk about blogging again, and I've had more inquiries. As my business coming, people going, yeah, I think I should be blogging again, and it's true because now that we've had this fracturization, like all these different platforms that exist, people have picked and chose. They've chosen the ones that speak to them that their audience might live on. But then there's the people that have grabbed onto every single social media platform and they haven't quite figured out yet. So I find them going back to the blog and but not necessarily having the blog as their particular platform. There's people that are using other blogging platforms like Medium is a big one for businesses, and LinkedIn is really getting into that market as well, where they're actually trying to say, hey, if you have an important idea, our platform is where you should share it because the audience that we have here is already in that mode. They're already, if you're writing a business article on LinkedIn, you already have people that go there are already thinking about, oh, this is my business persona. I need to, this is where I go to find information about my industry or other industries that I might be interested in, and having those ideas of people writing specifically on those platforms.
Yeah, but a lot of that is also driven on the business side by search engine optimization, and I don't want to really get into the technical part of it,
Yeah.
but for the listeners who aren't that technical, search engine optimization or SEO is how you get found online, and the easiest way to do that, or I suppose the only way to do that right now, is through text, through searches, and on Google or other search platforms. And so long-form blog content is still a great way for people to find what you're talking about, whether you're out there as an individual or as a business. And so in that sense, yeah, the blog can still act as a central hub. But I want to get into something you talked about a second ago, going to Medium or another third-party platform. I am really divided on that. I'm on the fence. Well, no. That makes it sound like it's a 50-50 split. I'm against it. I'm against going on, say, something like Medium. I am totally for going on to a blog that or some other website that has a dedicated idea that everyone is writing about, so or a sector. So whether it's we're going to talk about tech, or on this site we're going to talk about business, or this site we're going to talk about travel, and that's all of the conversations we're having are around this topic. But Medium and platforms like it are just a way for others to monetize your content. Like, they pretty much allow anyone on that now.
Yeah, and I always recommend people, if they do use those platforms, that they should be funneling them back to somewhere else, which is it becomes almost like a new version of a press release, except it's really specific, because in theory, if you're writing on any of those platforms, you really want to have a really honed argument. You want to make sure that the points you're making are very, very quick and almost sort of bullet pointy in a lot of ways. But it should always point back to somebody's central location, which I hope would have a blog on it, because you kind of want to capture these audiences that exist in these bubbles and on these platforms, and then break those people out of the bubble to come to your own little bubble where you've got your website, you've got your blog, your photographs, whatever it is you're putting out online, and hopefully you've expanded upon the thing you wrote on the other platform. I really don't want people to kind of dive into those pools and stay in those worlds and write all of their content on them, because you're right. I mean, they're being monetized by other people. They're being used by other people for other reasons.
And sorry, just to be clear, I have nothing against making money. I love making money.
Oh, neither do I.
But why are you making money for them when you could have it on your platform? And the barriers to entry are now basically zero in terms of ease of use and cost, and it's it basically requires very little sacrifice to get your
Well,
own platform going.
Only reason to play in those sandboxes is they have audiences already. Now, I would not recommend anyone going to, say, Medium, or actually even better, going to LinkedIn and be like, I had the sandwich at this restaurant. It was really fabulous. The tomatoes were just the best. No, that is not what you want to be writing on there. You want to be saying things like, I don't know, say you're an ice cream parlor connoisseur and you've started your own ice cream parlor, and you go in there talking about supply and demand of, I don't know, milk products to make the product you're building. But I talk more about it on my website. If you go here, is kind of what I recommend to people. But it's really about the eyeballs. There are eyeballs sitting there all day long, being notified by email, all of the things that are built into those platforms, telling people about new content. That's really the only reason.
That's fair. I would say, for something like LinkedIn, actually, I love LinkedIn for as a platform for getting your thought leadership out there for whatever you want to talk about. That actually, I know some businesses that are using that as their central hub, and it just makes more sense. It's a bit more, yes, it's focused on business in general. It's the businessy platform, but Medium is so, and I don't know why I'm picking on Medium, because there's other platforms out there.
There's tons.
But I would not want to put myself on something so generic that it's you can literally find anything there. You would want to go to let's say if you want to put your business content on something, your thought leadership on something beyond LinkedIn, getting into a magazine like Fast Company or something like that. I think it's easier to do that now. It's easier to be online on those kinds of platforms. What do you think about YouTube?
YouTube, if you ask anyone who knows anything about YouTube or online video, they'll tell you it's the second largest search engine next to Google itself. And it's sadly true because video, like television, is a very passive kind of thing, and you're able to consume short bits of video, which if there's video for it about a topic you want, if you want to learn a new skill, there's going to be something there. And I think it's really important because the one thing that we fail to recognize in text and in photographs is there's a skip higher level of connection between two human beings, one watching the video, one who made it. Because in theory, if you're creating a video and you're sharing it online with somebody, with potentially a lot of somebody's, you have that. If you do it right, if you aren't. You ever had those videos where you watch them and it's like, hey, we're going to be totally excited about this one thing I'm going to be talking about? Well, I don't know. I get turned off by those. If it's the same person going, hey, this might not be the video for you. You might not be interested in what I'm talking about, but here's what I'm interested in. I'm going to express it to you in a very plain way. And I might get excited a little bit, but otherwise I'm just going to give it to you in the way I understand it.
Yeah.
And I think that connection really I had a word and I lost it. But it really makes that connection just a little bit more solid, I think.
Yeah. I think about YouTube in a different way from, say, Medium or another blogging platform in that the content it's a specific type. It's obviously it's video as opposed to the written word, or on a blogging platform you can pretty much put any type of content, really. You can embed anything, but YouTube is videos. I like the promise of that you can be online and you can get your message out in a face-to-face kind of way almost, but yeah, I hate that it seems like most YouTube videos are horrible. The quality is bad. And I guess that's just an 80-20 thing of
human
society.
Exactly what I was going to say. The problem is that all these platforms at some level have been abused. They have been, somebody figured out how to game the system, how these search engines work. And they were able to create very mediocre, bottom of the barrel, guttural content that gets views or gets at least listed in a search because they've gamed it. And that's kind of why I'm thinking that these platforms like Medium and whatnot, for text anyway, have gained so much attention and so much power because they almost have their own built-in content filters, with people going to content and rating it either up or down. Maybe even not reading it. They read the first 2 sentences like, this is garbage, I'm out, I'm going somewhere else. So,
well, maybe, but where can they
depends.
go? This is the problem. Is these platforms have built up? They built up as a walled garden, right?
Yeah.
And the problem is that these gardens have grown so big that actually that's the only space anyone wants to play in. Now, and that's why there's so much garbage on YouTube in terms of like I'm a marketing guy, but I get a lot of marketing videos suggested for me that are just really, they may be high quality in terms of the effort that went into them. Clearly, people know how to be on camera, and they've got some good equipment, but it's just, this is not what I want to be seeing. And I guess, it's my own job of, I can set up filters to not see what I don't want to see. But then beyond the getting around, how do I find the gem in this heap of garbage, is YouTube is now, and this isn't YouTube alone. YouTube is essentially censoring content, making it harder for us to see things that, I guess, get caught up in its algorithm.
Yeah.
And demonetizing them. So again, if you want to be online and say you're on YouTube, and it would be nice to make money with it as well. Now you have to be careful of the censor. So this is an interesting trend that, or maybe a scary trend that's popped up in the last couple of years. And so now you've got...
You're talking about the whole advertiser-friendly movement.
Yeah. Maybe you can give a bit more context.
Well, in terms of, for the context of YouTube, I mean, over the past few years, YouTube has had an issue with content being, advertisements being displayed on content that the advertisers, if they recognize the content or see it, they might not want to be associated with it because their ad plays against some, horrific video from some other place. They might go, hey, we're going to pull all of our ads and that'll be it. So much for you. So a lot of these platforms, YouTube has been, of course, the most covered in the news and whatnot. So they've had to deal with adding additional filters, adding additional ways that advertisers can control their ads and things like that. And then we have, of course, the other platforms out there that I have noticed, just because I have been doing research on them for the past few months, are actually collapsing because they don't have advertisement. So a lot of these negative kind of bits of content are being posted there, but no one watches them there. They don't care that it's not YouTube. It doesn't have the same features, whatever. So, so we've had this backlash of kind of like in the cable, the broadcast networks back in the day, where if your show offended a particular group of people, they could say, hey, no, that's not acceptable, we don't want it, and your show could be canceled because of it. So the same thing is playing out on the internet now. So the only way to really get past that stuff is going back to the central hub of having a website that has your blog on it. That's why it becomes that much more important, because even if you post your video to YouTube, you might find, if you treat YouTube properly and you've created your channel, made it pretty and all these kinds of things, and you post to it on a regular basis, which YouTube loves, like every day, then you're able to sort of harness that energy of a few people finding you on that particular platform and then funneling them back to your website. That's really the only way to play and sort of fight against that sort of thing. However,
I'm curious, though, about this, sort of getting back to YouTube.
Yeah.
I didn't want to
go
quite
ahead.
finish it there.
Sure.
there's this new site that's coming out, or maybe it's already out, developed by Jordan Peterson, ThinkSpot, I think it's called.
I've heard of it. I haven't checked it out though. I don't know what's
So
up yet.
yeah, I mean, they're not just opening it up to anyone. I think they're sort of the what's it called, intellectual dark web people. They're
Yeah.
opening it up to those folks. So that they want to have some vetted people, so they don't have a bunch of sort of neo-Nazis, moving over there. And this is a reaction to what YouTube and other platforms have been doing with the censorship, which I see the devil's advocate position on the censorship side of things, where of course you don't want to be advertising your product next to let's say some. I'll take an obvious stupid example would be if someone sort of uploaded every speech by Adolf Hitler, and and with no context, just had it in, or actually the context would be, this is great. The context would be, I think this guy is really onto something. And whereas actually what we've seen is, and I'm pretty sure this is true. So I've heard some. I've heard people discussing this online. Is the examples of, say, high school teachers posting historical content about the Second World War and say Nazi imagery or they just mention the name Adolf Hitler and that gets demonetized or can't get viewed anymore. So this ThinkSpot thing, that I like the idea of it, where it's just okay. Well, free market of ideas. I don't think they're going to allow the garbage that has infected YouTube, where it's pretty much just people trying to game the system, getting eyeballs with stupid stuff. At the same time, I suspect like that they wouldn't kick you off for being dumb.
Yeah.
Because the whole idea is, free market of ideas. If your stuff is dumb, nobody's going to watch it.
Well, I mean, that's the thing that I've actually been saying this for a long time, probably at least 4 or 5 years, that the future of online content is eventually, I hope, knock on wood, going to become curation, where there will be actually human beings that will be able to sort of point people to content that's actually worth viewing, that has some sort of value to it. Because right now we're coasting through that, I'll click the next video because I'm bored or tired or I'm in bed with my tablet or whatever. That's always going to exist, but it is difficult to find decent things you might be interested in, things you know nothing about that you want to learn about. So you have things like the Peterson thing, where it's basically curating its content, and not to mention curating its audience. They have their, right now at least, they're picking and choosing who actually can come in. Imagine if Facebook did that.
I think they're doing that to basically test out the technology, so it doesn't crash.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that they don't want to be flooded. I mean, YouTube has to deal with that all the time. Yeah. And I think partially one of the problems that YouTube has now is that they're viewed as the place to go, where really they're just a technology that's like, here, it's hard for browsers to deal with video. It's getting easier as HTML develops, blah, 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 and all the nerdy stuff. But YouTube answered a very important question, in 2006 when it launched, because it was so hard to put a video online. So as those things have evolved, they're now, I think, kind of being mistaken for a technology being mistaken for a platform that's supposed to be doing something about curating content, which they're being forced into because of advertisers. So, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff around that, the whole thing. So I think eventually, I'm hoping that there will be a curation kind of idea that blogs, in theory, could do that. There are some ways of doing that. Sorry, keep going.
I wanted to talk also about the psychology. Not that we're psychologists,
no,
but
the
sort of the emotional foundation. Not quite sure if that's the phrase of being online. I think what I'm trying to get at is how you contrast being in real life, being in this world, with being online. Does your persona change? And should it? Probably. There's certain mechanics that go into successfully being online that you just an easy example is Twitter. Like you simply, you're incentivized to behave in ways that would not be acceptable in the physical world. So you would not go into a crowded food court and just start shouting the most toxic, vile things because you're going to get the most the most reactions. Because that's what you're looking for. It doesn't matter if people like it. It's if you get the reactions, that's what you want.
Well, it's like a number of years ago, Funny or Die, or one of those online comedy websites, had a video called Twitter in Real Life. And it was one of their comedy writers walking around New York for a while, coming out of a subway entrance going, "What is there to do here?" Just shouting it to the world. And then, going to Central Park and going to the big famous fountain going, "It sucks, but it's where I am at right now," or something like that. And then walking around with a picture of a cat going, "Who wants to see a picture of my cat?" Just shoving it in people's faces. So you have all these people reacting in sort of the real world going, "This guy's a creep." However, you're right. On Twitter, it would be perfectly acceptable to behave that way. Which... what was your original question?
Well, just how we smartly decide how to behave when we're online as opposed to in real life. What are some sort of rules for the road? Let's say you want it to be a good citizen online. How would that look as opposed to, say, being a stand-up guy in the real world?
Well, funny you should mention it. Yesterday, I read an article on Business Newsweek or whatever the heck it was about how to be a good citizen online, because and it was partnered with another article, at least that was the one that I found right away, about how to kind of avoid falling into the gaps of the ASAP world, where the article first was talking about how to be a good citizen, but in light of how platforms treat others. So the example they were giving was there's an online chat system called Slack, and Slack's incredibly popular. It went public this past week, which is why they were writing about it. But they were talking about how platforms like Slack cause this kind of burnout situation where people are when they're posting things on these systems, they're private generally, so there's only a certain audience that's there, but it somehow makes us demand things instantly, like that whole instant messaging sort of lie that's out there.
Well, I mean, that's been going on outside of online. Like you can imagine, say a boss calling up his executive assistant on the weekend.
Well, exactly.
But
the article was talking about how how people act online has been filtering into systems like that, where on yesterday, there was a situation where an online video game platform that I've been trying out recently was taken down because somebody set up a bunch of a bot network and went after them and brought them offline. And the company did only what it could do. It just said, "Hey, sorry, this is happening. We're dealing with it. We'll be back online as soon as possible. Might not be today, but definitely tomorrow." And they were very reasonable. They were just like, "This is what's going on. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we're going to be doing tomorrow." And the responses were, "It's Friday night. My life's ruined." Like, people like, would you, if somebody walked up to you and said, like in the Twitter example, "Hey, so Jonathan, yeah, I'm sorry, that thing you really like, it's going to be offline tomorrow because some idiot down the halls they pulled the plug. So we're working on it, man." And you being like, "I want my sandwich now. I don't understand why you can't give me that baked sandwich that I really like. What's wrong with you?" And in order to survive that, I mean, we already know that if anyone reads about this stuff online, about the psychological impact of basically keeping up with the Joneses, like I like that person on Instagram. They have this great life. Oh my God, I suck because I don't have what they do, or which get enough of that, and you could become a negative person, and you could be somebody that puts negative comments out there, like, acts like a douchebag on Twitter and says, hey, I know that you've just had a baby, but oh my God, your baby's so ugly. Like, oh my God, like, what's wrong? Is your gene pool damaged? Like, I have seen so much ugly stuff. But it is interesting how we as human beings react to it, because you can either choose to react to it, I think this is what I tell my clients. Like, you can choose to react to it in a way that's emotional, or you can just try the whole, I will now be the reasonable, rational human being, and I will either ignore them, or I'll give them a reasonable reaction that might answer their question, even though the commentary could be incredibly, just insanity. But it drains people. It drains people. In my experience, anyway.
Yeah. Well, look, we can talk about the ugliness of being online and interacting in that way. I think we've covered that, but you could stay in that rabbit hole for eons.
Yeah, easily.
I was curious about your thoughts on internet fame. Being not so much what they would call an internet celebrity, but or maybe that's part of it, but you think about, say, people who just start up an Instagram account, there's a lot of, especially on Instagram, you see a lot of beauty and fashion accounts, and there's a lot of people who are putting themselves out there, and they have like 100,000 subscribers on, say, them wearing swimsuits.
Yeah.
And
I've seen it.
Well, yeah, we're guys. So.
Well, no, I've seen people talk a lot about that kind of stuff. Where, I mean, the whole idea of it being internet famous, I think there's so few people that actually, naturally anyway, are prepared to deal with it. Because it can be overwhelming. If suddenly people are coming up to you wanting to kiss your ring, you're like, I gotta get a ring, I guess, or you could be like, no, I have nothing. No, I'm just Joe.
Yeah,
it's hard. I think it's really hard.
Again, I'm divided on this as well. Like, I mean, there's a part of me that's envious. It's sort of, you can wear a bikini, and now you've got 100,000 subscribers, and you and you're making money. And how is this different from me? What I was saying at the beginning, where being online sort of saved me from a life of digging ditches. Like, if these people can make money just with visual representations of themselves, taking a selfie a day, and they're making good money, that's, it seems like they're dumbing down the internet, and it also, or dumbing down society, and it also seems like, well, good for them. They're making money, and they're getting famous. And
I'm with you on that. I'm quite divided, because the content inherently really has no value. Like, there's no real value in it. When you have people advertising products that are in the photograph or somehow make the photograph make sense, then okay, the value to me increases, because so-and-so made a great body butter or something, whatever it is. If you're in your bikini and you're on the beach or on a poolside, kind of thing, then okay, yeah, all right, then that makes total sense. But for the sake of creating that content in order to be, famous in a way that, just for the sake of it, I mean, that's always going to exist. Reality TV poisoned us in that way. A lot of people bought into that sort of stuff, and its evolution's gone to the internet. But I think ultimately, I kind of side on if you're making money and you're being consistent and you're not behaving badly, or you're not necessarily behaving badly, you're not being a bad actor, you're not taking advantage of your audience, you're actually being responsible for your audience, which I always tell people, if they do get an audience, don't take them for granted, because they're lending their time to you, and you need to make sure that the value they're getting is important. Like, it's important to them, it should be important to you. But again, it's such a hard thing to deal with, because Sometimes you might create some content that goes off, it becomes a sensation, people love it, but it might not be something that you made because it's what you want to make. It might have just been like a lark. And I had a client do that. They made something, it got a huge response, but it was like, I just did it on Sunday afternoon and I, thought it was funny, but I don't want to do that every day. That's dumb. So yeah, I mean it's the problem of being able to being responsible is really kind of the thing. But
So we're running out of time. We're actually going to get pulled out of this recording studio in a second.
yeah, I can see the shields are up. Yeah, they're coming in.
Yeah, but I wanted to ask you. We've talked a lot about the past and present of being online, and any final thoughts about the future of being online? Where is all this headed?
I think my hope for the future is that people recognize that their content should be theirs on their own platform, not on somebody else's. Like we were talking about earlier, like with the Mediums and the YouTubes and all that kind of stuff, and the LinkedIns. I think they should play in those sandboxes a little bit, but they should always make sure their focus is, I'm going to give them something that's going to be worth them reading. If they decide I'm not worth following after that, no problem, great, I'll do it again next week or whatever. But ultimately, people coming back to their own online place, whether it's a blog or just a plain website or whatever it might be. But that's to me the key for all of this, especially if they want to build an audience. That to me is probably the most important piece, because sure, you can make videos, sure you could make tweets, sure you could make Facebook posts, sure you could make LinkedIn posts, whatever. But what if those platforms go away? What if they decide your content is not their cup of tea? Make sure that you have your own place where people can go and find out what you're doing.
Well, again, this ties into the whole promise of the online world that we've been talking about, is you can do your own thing. So you really have to build your own foundation, have your own home. So,
Exactly. Exactly.
All right, a good note to end on. You have been listening to the Future of podcast. We've been talking about the future of being online. Shane Burley, is there anything else? If someone wanted to find you, where would they find you online?
Well, if you want to find me online, you can go to, I have two websites, but the one I rebuilt last night, which tells you everything about me, is shaneburley.com.
Perfect. All right. Oh, and that ties into, you built a home where you are living online. Fantastic. All right. Thanks very much, Shane. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Let's go drink some beers.
Yes.